Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of Crudely Drawn Conclusions with David and Mike. Now, this episode, man, look, I'm going to be honest with you right now. It's a little distracting what's going on in my head. For the last, 30 to 40 minutes, Gangster's Paradise, the immortal Coolio classic Gangster's Paradise, has been playing over and over in my head. And of course, it hasn't been the entire song. It's just the half-remembered chorus from that beautiful, beautiful song that came out, 20 years ago? Over and over again. As I was editing the podcast, as I was listening to it, trying to do my very best to bring you a quality product, all I could hear was that we've been spending most of our lives living in a gangster's paradise. And it just played that over and over because I don't really remember the rest of the lyrics. I don't know if I ever knew them. But yeah, it's still playing. Even as I say this right now, as I'm speaking it into the ether, it's just playing nonstop in my head, and hopefully that will not continue. But that's not the point. That's not what we're talking about today. That's not what David and I talked about. David and I, we were talking about the patience of our commander-in-chief and how it's been wearing thin. He's been putting up with our guff for quite some time, with our baloney. But our commander-in-chief doesn't put up with malarkey. It's a no malarkey zone. He's tired of our shenanigans. We talked about that. We talked about AOC attending the Met Gala. I actually had to Google what the Met Gala was in the middle of the podcast. I pretended like I knew what it was, and I knew the function or the purpose of it while we were recording. And I think I fooled David. I think he thought that I knew what it was, but Google's still good for something other than biased information. I appreciate that, Google. I like fooling my co-host whenever I can. We talked about, lawnmowers. I don't know how that got in there, but David was very upset about his lawnmower situation, and I don't blame him for it. I mean, he did make the purchase. It was his fault. But you'll listen. Trust me, you'll find out all about that during the episode. And look, a little something I'm a little embarrassed about. Not really. But I've been saying for the last, 10 episodes, why don't you head on over to Cup of Joe and give us $5. Well, apparently, that's not the website. Cup of Joe, I don't know where the fuck I got that. It's called Buy Me a Coffee. Go to Buy Me a Coffee and give us $5. That makes more sense. No wonder we're not millionaires already. I've been blasting out Cup of Joe. I'm sure that is a website. Who knows what it is? That might be midget porn or, I don't know. I hope it's not midget porn. I'm going to check it out, though, after I finish recording this. You can guarantee that. But as always, we appreciate you listening. We appreciate you tuning in. And also, you can go over to the YouTube channel. David set all that shit up. I have no idea how he did it. Some kind of black magic or some kind of sacrifice to the dark gods. Cthulhu, perhaps. But anyway, it's up there. Crudely Drawn Conclusions podcast on YouTube. Go view it. There's no actual camera. You can just listen to it. It's a different way to listen to it. And apparently the YouTubes are pretty popular with the kiddos. So head on over there. And I'm about to turn it over to some theme music by Kid Quill and young David Chapman.
No top hits, neighbors think it's obnoxious. I'm sorry, Mrs. Anderson, but damn, you gon' have to wait until the drop hits. I forgot to take my vitamins, but didn't forget to smoke.
Hello. Welcome to Crudely Drawn Conclusions with David and Mike. How you doing, man?
I think you're supposed to say, hey. That's kind of become your trademark over the last 32 or 33 episodes, but I'm great.
Yeah. I guess I mixed it up a little bit. Glad to hear you're great, man.
We got a little microphone rust. It's been a week or so since we recorded.
It has been a while. I will say, and I don't know if this happens to you too, but it's become, now that I'm getting a little older, it's becoming so easy to fall asleep. Like almost every night I'll be like trying to, laying with my kids, trying to get them to fall asleep, or not try to get them to fall asleep, but it's like their bedtime, and I'm just like, I'll read them a story, or I'm talking to them, and next thing I know, I wake up in the morning.
Well, yeah, because
does that happen to you?
Well, yeah, that's what happens to a mass of men throughout history. Is they get married, they get a family, and then they get tired trying to make a living and trying to provide for that family, and anything they wanted to produce extra above and beyond that, or any interests they formerly had, any hobbies they formerly had, are kicked to the side because they have other obligations, and then they get so used to certain things, the way things are, and then they get tired, and they fall asleep at 9 p.m., and then they wake up, and all that creativity time was spent in slumber, getting ready to earn that living wage the next day.
That's right, and seeing as how this is kind of our side hustle. I mean, we work and we have other things going on, so most of the time we're recording, late at night, early in the morning, kind of off strange hours and so on, and it I got to start like setting an alarm or something, but I never felt like it was that hard to stay awake. Now I'm like, I know I'm going to be doing something in the evening. I know I got other things to do, and wake up and it's 5 a.m.
You're kind of like a dog in that respect. You just kind of nod off throughout the evening and the afternoon, and you're perfectly fine with that. Your body requires so much sleep, so much downtime. It seems contrary to evolution that your body would constantly need to be not aware of anything.
And man, it really just takes nothing. Like if I just have 10 quiet seconds, I'm asleep. It's kind of impressive, I would say, but kind of annoying at the same time.
That's why I drink so much. I like to start in the evening early and start imbibing as quickly and as professionally as possible, just to give my brain something to do. And then when I go to sleep, I do sleep the sleep of the damned, the sleep of the just, depending on how you want to look at it. But that's not true.
Yeah.
I'm not a raging alcoholic over here. I'm always drinking something, whether it's coffee or beer or water. I'm well hydrated.
Good. I love to hear that, man. Well, let's jump into a little bit of news. Our good friend, not our good friend, but somebody I think you know pretty well, Norm Mcdonald, famous comedian, passed away this week. I was going to see what your take was on that.
Well, it kind of hurt my heart. If your heart is the center of your emotions, which that one was a big one because I always liked Norm Mcdonald. Watched him on Saturday Night Live back in the 90s. He had an off-putting brand of comedy to some. To the guys who like the laugh out loud, the big guffaws, the Larry the Cable Guy type humor, the Jeff Foxworthy, the over-the-top Kevin Hart's. Not that there's anything wrong with any of their comedy. I got to be, make that clear. But Norm Macdonald said whatever the fuck he wanted, and he said it in he delivered the punchline with the same intonation that he delivered all the rest of the joke. He wasn't waiting for a payoff. He just said it. It's a different type of comedy, and some people didn't appreciate it, but most comedians did. And apparently he had cancer for the last 10 years, and almost nobody knew about it. And then he just died. And, that's the way it goes. That's unfortunately the way it goes for pretty much everything. But, in this day and age, everybody knows everything before it happens, but I knew nothing about Norm Macdonald's cancer before it actually took him off this mortal coil. I mean, I would look at him in videos and I would say, man, he's aging a little poorly. I didn't know that he's probably on chemotherapy at that time, or who knows what kind of treatments they were giving to him. But yeah, I'll miss the comedy of Norm Macdonald, losing what little is left of all of my quote unquote heroes.
Yeah, so did he just not make it public that he was battling cancer?
Yeah, I mean, apparently he said he wanted to make it all about the comedy, or he just didn't feel like giving up his public details. It's like, right now, we don't have a large audience, but we have an audience. I don't want to get on here and talk about everything that happens to be in my personal life, so if you scale that up and you get a particular type of personality, I'm sure Norm Macdonald was much the same way. It's like, yeah, I'm fucking dying of cancer, but I'm telling jokes over here. What do the two have to do with one another?
It feels pretty rare, that a celebrity, I know they're all different, but a celebrity just doesn't, give out that kind of information. Usually you know a lot about these, these celebrities, but yeah, I guess every now and then there's one that comes around that's pretty private, and I guess he was one of those.
Well, one thing that all celebrities kind of have in common is they all want to be famous. They all want to have some level of fame. They all want to be rich to a certain degree. But, with a comedy or a comedian like Norm Macdonald, and I'm not dissecting him, I didn't know him, I just listened to his stand-up specials and watched his show back in the 90s and watched SNL back in the 90s. But it seems like he just wanted to tell jokes and get paid for it. And that's what he did. Whereas, if you want to go with somebody who's just clearly chasing the fame and the money, it's a little different. So they're selling not what they do so much, but they're selling who they are. Norm Macdonald was just selling his brand of comedy. And he's like, here, I'm giving you the joke. You're going to laugh at the joke. And then I'm going to go back to my house and do whatever the fuck I want. And, I don't want to dissect him too much because I respect him. I actually respect Norm Macdonald. And I will miss listening to him, even though he does have hundreds and hundreds of hours of stuff you can go back and listen to. And I do suggest that you do that. And maybe you can appreciate just how good he was at, and a lot of times he would play the, he would set somebody up so they could tell their joke. He's a great setup man.
No, he will be missed. I know we talk about lists every now and then. Is he in a top 10, top 20, top 50 comedians?
He's definitely in the top 50. This is a list I take even more seriously than I do movies because, you say I'm a big movie buff, big movie fan, but there's nothing that I've listened or watched more than stand-up comedy since the time, I listened to stand-up comedy when I was a kid. I first listened to Eddie Murphy back in the late 80s, but I didn't really, really get into stand-up comedy until I was about 20 years old, and I started stealing all the stand-up comedy albums on the internet. But ever since then, for the last 20 years, I've listened to stand-up comedy pretty much like most people listen to music. So that's a list that I would definitely have to sit down and kind of page through and thumb through and make all my notations and come back and give you this definitive list of the best stand-up comedy that you could ever hear, the best stand-up comedians that you could ever hear. That doesn't really matter anyway because comedy really is subjective. But I would say that he was definitely in the top 50, maybe in the top 25, but I'm definitely going to make that list now because I have to.
Yeah, all right, so moving on, a lot of news since the last time we talked. I mean, you and I, we were talking, before we started just about how much has happened the last week. And one of those was our president whose patience is wearing thin.
Oh God, here we go.
I don't know if you heard the speech, but I think that's a line that's been
I may have heard that.
That's been shown quite a bit, and he's talking about vaccinations and the unvaccinated and so on, and he's been patient. He's been trying different things, him and his administration.
Sure.
And now he kind of leans forward, puts his, he kind of does this now. And I find it really amusing watching him. And hey, I'll give it to you. Speaking is not easy, standing in front of a whole bunch of people, standing in front of millions of people that are watching on TV. But I love how Biden has this thing now. And not like I dislike him or anything like that. I actually really find it entertaining when he leans forward, puts his elbows on the podium, and he starts kind of whispering. But he leaned forward and he was talking about how his patience is wearing thin, and I don't know. What do you think about that?
What do I think about that? Well, if we're going point counterpoint, I guess I got to start off with the bat. Did you say you don't dislike? I want to ask you something. You said in that statement you don't dislike him. Is that something that just came to mind, or is it like you really don't dislike him? You really don't have an opinion either way?
I really don't have an opinion either. I mean, there's celebrities and there's politicians and so on that I really dislike, and I don't know. I don't think I mean, he seems like a decent guy. It's not. No. Just okay. I didn't. I wasn't like an Obama fan, or I wasn't like a George W. Bush fan or anything like that. But I just said, okay, they seem like nice people or whatever. But then there's some. I'm trying to think of some a celebrity that I just. Okay, it's easier with sports or fighting for me, but a Jake Paul type character. Not everyone knows who Jake Paul is, but he's this YouTuber that is now a boxer who trolls a lot of MMA people, and he is somebody who I dislike. I don't know why, but I just dislike the guy.
Don't like that guy.
I don't know what it is. I just I dislike him. There's been athletes over the years that I could say, they're polarizing, and you don't like him. And, so that's what I would say about Biden. I don't really have feelings about the guy. I think some of the stuff he's doing I'm not a fan of it and stuff, but I don't like hate him or anything.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's fair. I just wanted to kind of throw it back on you for a minute and just get kind of your take on that. But as far as what he said and like who Joe Biden is as everyone knows, a 50-year politician, which no one in the founding of our nation ever thought that you could be a 50-year politician. That would even have occurred to them, of course, because of the life expectancies back then, even though most of those founding fathers who were rather rich lived for quite some time, fairly old when they died. So yeah, he has been in politics for 50 years, and he doesn't have like a spine. He doesn't have a spine of his own. It's just whatever the party tells him to do on whatever day that happens to be. You can go back and look through all the history of Joe Biden. He just vacillates back and forth depending on the times of the day. Just whatever. I mean, you can look from back 6 months ago. The things that he says now are directly polar opposite to the things he said 6 months ago, because he probably doesn't remember saying them anyway, because he just reads whatever is told to him. And yes, you're right. He is still affecting the idea of being a politician, of being the president. He wanted to be the president so badly. He ran 3 times. He finally won on that 3rd time. And now his patience is running thin. And he did lean in, and he did give that big Joker smile. And it is jarring to look back over the last. He does have that Joker smile these days. His face looks like it almost splits in half. And you look back over from the last 5 years, and you see how Joe Biden was just 5 years ago, and he was still Joe Biden. But now I don't know what this is. This is startling to see the aging process that has rapidly taken effect over the last 5 years. So it has been interesting to behold. And of course, what do I think when a 79-year-old man tells me that his patience is growing thin with me? I think about what would happen in the wild if an extremely aged animal or a leader of go back to the chieftains, the tribes, and an really old man, and the only way he has any power is because he has entrenched power. He just leans in and tells me his patience is growing thin. It's like, yeah, but I don't care what you think, because it's not supposed to work like that. You're supposed to execute the laws of the land. And I know I'm mixing metaphors here, but this issue is kind of it's one of the biggest issues of our last week anyway. I mean, the week before last, it was Afghanistan. When we all fucked it up, and all the Americans were left behind, and we were helicoptering them off of the roofs of the embassies, and now the Taliban has taken the country back over, and they are living in our $700 million embassy, and they have the $85 billion worth of weapons that we left behind for the Afghan Defense Force that they immediately squashed because the Afghan Defense Force didn't fight. So that was last week, or the week before last, rather. So this last week, when he leans in and tells me his patience is wearing thin, and with my hesitancy to take this vaccine that he himself 7 to 8 months ago was saying that he was hesitant about, and we really needed to review the science. So yeah, when he leans in and tells me that it only has effect because he has the power of mandate, and then he has the propaganda machine behind him to basically tell everyone who hasn't taken the vaccine that they're stupid because they don't take a vaccine which doesn't actually prevent you from getting anything. It just supposedly has a therapeutic effect, which it hasn't been studied long term, and it definitely doesn't prevent you from getting the virus, and it definitely doesn't prevent you from transmitting the virus. So what is it? It's a therapeutic at best. So when a government official leans in and tells me he's going to make me do something, it does tend to make me want to dig my heels in a bit, and I don't want to be that redneck with my hat turned around backwards and my 20-gauge shotgun on my shoulder. I don't want to be that guy. I'm not that guy. But when it's so overt that this is definitely a power grab, that when you watch it around the world, how different nations have just put their collective boot on the backs or on the neck of their populace, and their populace just whines about it. That does kind of rub me the wrong way.
It when he and I get so hung up on my patience is wearing thin thing.
I love that
because line. I mean you talked about it in the last few podcasts where it's your daddy, And that's the first thing I thought. Oh, I'm sorry, Daddy. And look, I've had a vaccine. So he's not really talking to me, I guess. I mean, I'm in his good graces.
You're the good boy.
There's other people that aren't. I'm a good boy, so this shouldn't bother me. But
it definitely should.
I just think it's hilarious. Oh, Daddy. And are there really people out there that are like, oh, wow, that are kind of nervous, like, oh, his patience is wearing thin. Okay, I'll go get it now. I've held out this long. I'm going to go get it. Just
no, because no one. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but like
you're good.
Right.
You're good.
There's no one that had a positive impact on. There's like he's sitting in his room. He's sitting in his living room. He's drinking his. That's what the left has an idea of what like a redneck is, or what a right wing guy's like. He's sitting in his living room. His belly's gigantic, and he's got his hand down his pants, and he's
watching NASCAR,
drinking Busch Light, and then Joe Biden comes on the screen with his, like I said, with his Joker smile, his Joker grin, and he leans in and says, "My patience is wearing thin," and that redneck says, "Oh Jesus, I better go to my local Walgreens and schedule that vaccine." No, that doesn't happen that way. People who want the vaccine can get the vaccine, and people who don't want it haven't gotten it for a fucking reason. Whether it's a stupid reason, which it may be, they just might be being obstinate. They may not trust the federal government, whatever their reason may be. And one thing that gets me when somebody says, when they're a proponent of having your own choice to decide what you put in your body, as far as the vaccine is concerned, when they say, well, look. I have the vaccine, but I'm not going to tell you. And I believe that vaccines work. I believe that it's a good solution. Why do you have to quantify it? You're not even allowed to have an opinion anymore. You can't just say that, look, this doesn't seem to work. This doesn't seem to be a vaccine. It seems to be some kind of medicine, that there are other medicines available for you to take to kind of alleviate the symptoms. And it still seems to be killing the same people within the same groups. And there's always those glaring examples of people who die. Oh, she was only 27 years old and she was a mother. Yeah, that's one motherfucker. I read the stats from last week. Up to this point, 113 people have died. I need to look at the time frame of this. 113 people in the state of Louisiana have died, mostly because they were unvaccinated. It's like, yeah, 113 out of 4.6 million. That does suck. That's unfortunate. But it seems to be about the same rate of infection and death, or maybe lower. But if it's this pandemic of the unvaccinated, that's clearly not the definition of how a vaccine is supposed to work. So it's not a vaccine. It's a drug, which is made by a company, or a series of companies, but mostly Pfizer and Moderna, that are making record amounts of money. Because another thing that's been put out there is that it's free. It's free. Go get it. It's free. No, bitch. Somebody's paying for that. It's $33 billion worth of profit projected this year for Pfizer, when last year they made $8.6 billion. So that does seem to be kind of an uptake. And I'm not saying it's for that. I'm just saying that we're stupid. All of us. We're a stupid species that occasionally we ride on the backs of geniuses. A couple of people make really smart decisions and then a lot of stupid decisions. But if you say that you can't have that decision, if you take that away and say that you must do as I say, then we're no longer what we intended to be. We're no longer that.
I got an insider. I've told you before, I have a neighbor that's a doctor, and I get insider information from the medical community sometimes. But what at least what seems to be happening here in Houston, yeah, there's a lot of vaccinated people that are getting COVID. They said that a lot of the ICUs are mainly filled with unvaccinated people. So
yeah, sure.
Whatever that means,
That's their choice, right?
So
you don't have a choice.
Exactly. It does appear that people who are vaccinated who get it seem to do better. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't stop you from getting it. And you actually said, so back to my patience is wearing thin business.
Yeah, that's
you mentioned something I hadn't really thought about, but it's so true. Like, hold up, like, a week ago, have we already forgotten about Afghanistan? And I agree. We had a full podcast about it. I was totally on board with leaving Afghanistan and everything. But the way it happened obviously was a train wreck. There's a lot of people who, the Secretary of State, he's been in front of, I think, the House Foreign Affairs Committee, getting grilled about how they pulled out. And he's getting grilled from both sides, and rightfully so. That pullout was pretty bad. I think they thought the Afghan army was going to hang on a little longer than 24 hours with all that gear and all the knowledge that's been spent over there for the last 20 years. But anyway, his what you had a great point. His patience is wearing thin, but hold up, like, do we just forget? Like, so you're saying you're frustrated with this group of people, and you're leaning forward, and you're gonna act like daddy. You're gonna act like daddy, and you're gonna be upset. But hold up, what about that train wreck a week ago that's on you? Like, is our patience are we okay? Like, can we be impatient with you?
No,
but no, the cycle just moves on. No, we've forgotten about that now. We've moved on, and now it's back to these people that we're frustrated with.
Yeah, man, it's a cycle, and like COVID is basically East Asia now. In 1984, we have always been at war with East Asia. Anytime we need something to go back to, old Uncle COVID's there to help out. It's always there to waiting around the corner. He's like, we're opening back up. Things are going pretty well. COVID's rearing its ugly head. We have all these. I am not a conspiracy theorist, but god damn, man, it's at what point do you say that I don't get the argument this is about public health. If you want the fucking vaccine, take the vaccine. Cool. That's you. And if you get the deadly COVID from me because I'm not vaccinated, well, you have the vaccine, and it's supposed to be very therapeutic for you, or maybe prevent you altogether from getting it. So if I die, you don't seem to like me anyway. There seems to be a pretty big, clear divide in this country between one side and the other, even though I've never been on any side whatsoever. But now I'm being what's he's doing. He's pushing everybody into a camp here. Everybody, and then when you tell somebody like that, if you tell especially guys from the South, if you say my patience is growing thin, they're a bunch of macho assholes out here, right? So they're really going to dig their heels in then. At this point, for me, it's basically like being obstinate. You're telling me to do it, so no, I'm not going to do it because it doesn't seem to benefit me in any way other than the fact that you want me to do it. And now you're going to take away all my playthings, all my toys, all the places I can go. And then you're going to take away my ability to earn a living to feed my family because I won't do what you tell me to. Even though you've clearly said that you don't have the federal authority to do that because that's not how the fucking country works. But that's how it is working now because we've always been at war with East Asia and we always will be.
Yeah.
And it's grim out here.
It's grim. And again, not to keep harping on it, but I love the line, my patience is wearing thin. And that's where I was going to transition. Unless you had more to talk about that one.
I was going to talk about my patience
wearing. Exactly. And my patience has been wearing thin this last 2 weeks. And I've talked to you offline. I wasn't going to bring it on the show, but I have to. I'm too fired up about it. I got a lawnmower situation. And I finally hit a breaking point last week. And I think this is probably funny for you. I've had a battery-powered lawnmower or electric or whatever the hell it's called. And got it about, I want to say, less than 2 years ago. And have you heard of Ryobi? I believe it's Japanese or Korean or something.
Either way, a fine product.
Yeah,
speaking. Very
fine
expensive,
product.
Very expensive.
Yeah. I don't remember how much it was, but anyway, I've been mowing the lawn fine with this thing. The only problem is, when you're used to a nice hearty piece of, I've mowed grass my whole life. This thing's a little bit lighter. It's a little bit more plastic. You know what I mean?
I do know.
And anyway, yeah. So last few weeks, my battery hasn't lasted the full lawn cut. Ended up getting a second battery.
How much was that?
And then the second battery was under $100, but it was, I want to say it was like 60. It's like for the 40 volt battery. Anyway. So last week mowing the grass and the thing would not start. It kept starting and then I'd go about 2 minutes and the thing would just turn off. And the more you turn it off and on, the faster it drains that battery. Next thing I know, I'd run through 2 batteries and I hadn't even done half the lawn. And I almost picked this thing up and slammed it on the ground. I was so enraged. And ended up, there were some friendly people some friendly people mowing the grass next door. I approached them. They allowed, they said, "Oh, cool, for a hefty sum of money, we will finish your yard for you." So I've decided I'm no longer going to be in the battery-powered lawnmower game anymore, and I'm currently shopping for a gas-powered one just so I can have something reliable. It has been it hadn't been a rough 2 years, but it's had its ups and downs.
Yeah, you're one of those early adopters. You got the technology. It seems like a great idea. It's reasonably effective once you first get it. You take it out of the box, you turn it on. You don't have to put any nasty fossil fuels. Not that you really gave a shit about that, but that's one of the appeals of it. You don't have to get the sounds and the smells and the textures of it. It's clean and it's plastic and it's environmentally friendly because you just charge it you plug it right into the battery charger, and then the battery charger is plugged into the wall, which is probably plugged into some kind of coal plant somewhere, or diesel generated, or maybe it's clean energy. Either way, you're doing your part for the world and the environment. And then you're walking around and it's working pretty well at first, but batteries tend to lose charge over time, and then they don't take a charge as well because the technology is just not there, especially for something so robust as something that needs to constantly spin and cut grass. So yeah, it's a piece of shit, and they're going to be pieces of shit for quite some time. I actually saw a riding battery-powered mower the other day at some kind of establishment for sale for a reasonable price, $3,500 or some shit like that. And then I thought to myself, what kind of madman would get a zero-turn riding lawnmower that runs on batteries that could probably go for about 25 minutes? If you need something that is a zero-turn, you're mowing large expanses of grass. Otherwise, you're just a fat slob who's probably going to die of the COVID anyway because you don't have any physical ability to actually mow your quarter of an acre lawn. So the technology is not there, and that's the reason why you go back and you get yourself one of those little Craftsman or Briggs and Stratton, just basic lawnmower, and it'll last for probably longer than you will with this deadly pandemic that's raging around us.
Yeah, no, it's been an interesting few weeks, and
I would have loved to see you almost destroy that thing. That would have been
I could have. It's a really light piece of equipment, and so this has had some ups and downs, and so one of them is, and I never had this when I had a gas powered because they're sturdy, they're a little heavier, so this thing being so much plastic. At one point I realized, oh look, I start, I don't do like an inspection of it each time I use it. Maybe I should have, but I started looking and I was getting a little bit of movement in the handle, and I'm like, what's going on? And I realized, like 3 screws have popped off this thing. Now I got to go buy screws and put them back on. And actually, so my dad, the saint of the man that he is, he was over at my house a couple weeks ago, and I'm complaining about this lawnmower, and he's like, here. Like, I'll run out there and I'll get some replacement screws for you. I'm like, really? You don't have to do it. Anyway, he runs to Home Depot. He comes back. He had my kid with him, and he was like, man, you'll never guess this. He's like, I went to 4 different places. This screw does not exist. You have to go on Ryobi's website to get it. It's like a specialized lawnmower screw. Yeah. And I was like, oh, just another annoying thing with this thing. So I never ended up going to get the screw, but that's one annoying thing. And I know we're going to have a lot of people complain. There's not a whole lot of passionate lawnmower people, but I got one other thing I need to complain about this thing. So if you get the pull, the regular traditional lawnmower,
sure,
no problem to start that thing ever. Now, the battery-powered one, you have to make sure that all the little knobs are down in the right way, and this has to be. So there's 5 to 8 different checks I had to do every time. And if everything wasn't lined up correctly, you couldn't start it. So you had to, this button had to be down, and this one, and this, make sure this, and this thing's extended all the way, and whatever. And so you could be mowing, and you just kind of brush up against a tree or something like that, and one of the little things gets affected, boom, it just turns off. So it's just.
Oh God, I would have destroyed that long ago.
So that is what happened last week, and it wasn't like I kept bumping stuff. It was just like something wasn't lining up right. So it would start and then stop and start and stop. And finally, that's when I said, you know what? I'm done. I'm just done with it. And anyway, I'll probably post it on old Facebook Marketplace soon and get something else.
Well, as well you should. Because, you don't need to. We overcomplicate everything. We always changing and constantly modifying. But it's hard to beat that contained explosion that is a combustion engine. Then, you got spark, you got fuel, you turn it on, and it wants to explode, and it wants to keep exploding as long as there's a fuel source, as long as it's contained and it's not losing compression. As long as there's fire there, it's going to go. So, yeah, it's kind of hard to beat that thing, but we are going to beat it one day. But, you look back on, say, the Star Treks, and they had all these beeping lights and the sounds and there's lights flashing everywhere and there's 1,000 buttons. And, how can you think to yourself, how could anybody ever learn how to fly that goddamn Starship Enterprise? But, people do, because that's what people do. They specialize in things. But, your lawnmower was much the same way. You had to have a startup sequence in order to start this thing. And is that better? I don't know if that's better. It doesn't seem to be better than just pump, 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 pull. That seemed to work out pretty well for the last 100 years or so. But, I guess it's always modern life. We're always going to be moving on. We're always going to be innovating and making things better. When it's not really better, a lot of times it's just different. And we just crave something we always crave something that's different. And that seems to be, I think that it comes with age from watching. You see all the differences that have come along the way throughout your life, and it's like, this is not any better than it was before. It may have a slight advantage in one way, but it's worse in another way, no matter what it is. But there's always some kind of change to it, just because we have to change things and we have to tinker with things all the time. But I'm glad you're moving on. You're going to get rid of this electric piece of shit. Come back in 10 years once Elon has perfected the technology and we're all riding around in our Tesla lawnmowers.
Exactly. And I think that's exactly true. It will eventually get there. And when I bought mine, they had just come out with like the 40-volt one. And I read a whole lot about it, and I think I talked to somebody, and it was like, oh yeah, they had like lawnmowers that were weaker than that. And people went out and they bought them. But you couldn't make it you couldn't go like 25, 30 minutes. And especially if you had a long, if your grass was kind of long, it was kind of a little more difficult. Or you had to have like several batteries. So people were really excited when the 40-volt came out. Oh man, you can make it through a whole lawn now. And you know what? I see that, and I think you're right. This technology will get there, but it's not there yet, in my opinion. I've been able to cut my grass successfully for 2 years, year and a half, however long I've had this thing. But there's been some ups and downs, and I'll definitely try it out once it gets a little bit better. But for now, I'm going back to the old reliable pull start combustion engine one.
Well, and like I said, I don't want to turn this into a lawnmower sales show or review show. But when I think about this, I just think about the idea that we're making electric everything now, especially electric cars, electric lawnmowers, electric weed eaters, whatever. Everything's going to electric. Because we think, and sometimes in our modern mind, that the electric power just comes out of the wall, and we can just plug it in, and now we don't have to feel so guilty, all this and that. We can see the oil. We can smell the gas. That's nasty. That's dirty. That came out of the earth, and somebody had to get that. But, when you just plug it into the wall, then, that's clean power. And then you say, well, at least it's clean when I'm running the thing, right? I'm turning it on, and it's not putting off any fumes, and maybe that's the case. But I think we are operating from the idea that we can exist in a world where we don't take from it. That's not true. Everything in this world takes from the world. You live off the world because you're part of the world. You're just in a different part of the world. Everything is organic because everything comes from the fucking earth. So the idea that you can exist, you can get by on this planet throughout your life without killing anything or without taking some kind of natural resource, just going on and just sliding on through. No organism in the history of this planet has ever done that, because that's not how fucking things work. Things have to die. Things have to be consumed in order to be changed into something else. It's the same thing for that battery. All the materials that go into making that battery that you put into your feel-good electric lawnmower, your feel-good electric car, which are going to be great one day, they have a cost. They have a price. They have people that are mining that shit that goes into those batteries right now in Africa. And let me tell you, somebody's exploiting it because that's what capitalists do. That's what our system does. Anytime we can make some money, and socialists will do the same goddamn thing. They'll just keep all the money, and communists just keep all the money themselves. So that's just human nature. So if those batteries and those raw materials that they need for them, they're not paying a fair wage for that shit because they're trying to make money. That shit's being mined out of the ground, just like oil has been and will continue to be drilled out of the ground for the foreseeable future. There's always a cost to pay for whatever you have, whether it be your toothbrush that you use to take the plaque off your teeth with your fluoride toothpaste, down to your electric lawnmower and your electric car. You're paying a price somewhere. Somebody's putting some sweat equity into that motherfucker, and you're eating or you're consuming something.
Well, that's true. Well, speaking of consuming things and selling things and this whole the being capitalist like we are, Facebook Marketplace, I mentioned that a little bit. I'll probably be putting that lawnmower on there. But today I actually put something else on there. I put I'm going to be parting with my barbecue smoker that I've had for a while. Just haven't had the time, man. You know, we could talk all day about that. But anyway, it's been sitting in my garage now for about close to a year without me using it. And so anyway, I said for the last month, you know, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to sell this thing. I'm not using it. It's still worth something. It's actually like a really nice smoker. So I've never used Facebook Marketplace, but my wife uses it, so she suggested that I put it up there. So I took a couple pictures, put it on Facebook Marketplace, and I don't know if this happens to other people, but I was either getting messaged by a lot of trolls or bots or something like that, or scammers. But I mean, I had like 4 or 5 people message me immediately. Like as soon as the post went up, I was like, wow, I mean, this thing, this thing's really bringing in some interest or something. Yeah, it's like, I guess a lot of people have been dying for one of these smokers. And, you know, at first I was like, these don't really look like people who are looking for smokers. Like you think more of kind of a middle-aged man, but I mean, some of these were like, you know, they look like 20-year-old. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Some of them were like 20-year-old girls, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe they're shopping for their dad or their boyfriend or something. I don't know. But then I started realizing, wait, like, because at first they were asking me, hey, is it available? You know, things like that, and I was responding to all of them at the same time, and then they all asked me. They were like, okay, hey, I'm going to send you a link, and this is just to verify that this is real. I'm like. You know, I try to actually look into this online, and you know, like does Facebook Marketplace like have a link or something? Anyway, I'm assuming they're all like trying to like steal something from me or something. I don't know. Have you ever seen this at all? My wife said to just ignore them. She said they're bots or something.
Look, I don't trust anybody. This is 2021. You're not supposed to trust any kind of strangers. There's always a stranger danger out there. So definitely don't click that link, which I'm sure you did. And you're a smart man. You're a reasonable man. You wouldn't do that. Your wife is probably right. Just ignore those. I've personally never used Facebook Marketplace because I don't engage in the market. I buy whatever I have to, and I try to avoid any kind of commerce other than that. I do buy ammunition sometimes, but other than that, no extraneous purchases for me, and I try not to engage in any selling anything because I just throw it away because I don't give a shit about the environment. But in this instance, it just kind of illustrates the fact that the internet just went off the fucking rails. I mean, it's always been off the rails. You know, even back in the 90s, or early 2000s, they were joking about how everything was porn because it kind of illustrated how the basic nature of humanity worked anyway. As soon as you could share something, you began sharing dick pics and pussy pics, and vaginas were just flying hither and yon, and pornography was everywhere. I can remember in 1994 in shop class trying to download a picture of Cindy Crawford with all the pixelations, and it took an hour, but you finally got that picture in 1994 on the computer, and then you hastily had to close it out. And it wouldn't close out because it was a buggy piece of shit in 1994. But yeah, it is funny now when you try to go on Marketplace, which is supposed to be constructed to sell these things. Everybody's always got a workaround, always got a fix for it, because the internet is still thankfully somewhat, a little bit, parts of it anyway, the wild, wild west, and you have to protect yourself at all times from all these fucking strangers. You definitely can't trust it because they're trying to eat you and take your money. So definitely don't click the link. And I do appreciate the level of deception that they will go to now, and how complicated the level is with all these bots that they have out there. It's most impressive that they can actually pull this stuff off. And people fall for it all the time. You still get those calls all the time, those dealer services calls for your extended warranty. I know that's a hack premise, a hack joke, but I got 2 or 3 of them yesterday. So apparently people are still fucking falling for this. When they call you and ask you to verify your own information, you tell them, and then they steal your fucking money. It's amazing to me. So yeah, there's always people to prey on dumb people.
I remember a long time ago there was those scams where people were like, "Hey, I'm in this other country, Guatemala, Nigeria, whatever, and I need you to send me money." And I actually think before the internet, though, people would actually send physical letters with that. And I heard of people getting scammed that way, and then you started seeing that made a smooth transition to email. And then people started getting scammed that way, and they could really scale, right? I mean, if they're they have a bunch of stationery, they're actually spending money on stamps and so on. Now they got this sweet email situation. I think they were able to do pretty well. But yeah, you're right. I mean, with as many good things as the internet has, it sure does come with a few kind of sketchy ones.
Well, that is life, right? Everything comes with sketchy ones, and that's what we always try to sanitize. Just like I said, when we try to sanitize the nastiness out of just mowing the lawn, the nastiness is always there. You just disguise it in different ways. Everything's always there. Nothing really changes, just the artifice on top of it. So at the base level, anyway, there's lots of things that change on a day-to-day basis, for sure. That the humanity vacillates back and forth, but at the base, humanity is still the same, and life on Earth is still the same. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to quantify sometimes. I mean, it's not really hard to quantify, I guess. I could think about it all day long, which I do sometimes, usually when I'm off by myself, and then I immediately forget it with my the middle-aged brain is starting to fucking fall apart. Now, I'm in my 40s. I can't imagine leading the country if I was in my 70s. What the fuck are you doing with that sloppy, smooth orb that's in your skull up there? I mean, it barely even process thoughts. And if you're offended by this, then you're probably a very old person as well, and you're too old to be listening to this podcast. I mean, if you're 79, I saw a 79-year-old driving the other day, and I was terrified. Stay away. Oh, you stay away. If he was hunched over, his knurled fingers on the wheel, he was clearly trying to focus through these Coke bottle frames. You're like, oh my God, please, sir, be careful out there. There's children around. There's women and children walking up and down the streets, and he could take them out and kill them. And that's a guy who's just driving a truck. So you got one guy that's actually in charge of the entire country. And I know I just went back to Joe Biden because I'm still thinking about that daddy thing. We all have daddy issues, don't we?
We do. Well, let's go ahead and transition to somebody else who might have some daddy issues.
I hope so.
I hesitated a little bit bringing this one up. Another popular story this week was our good friend AOC and a dress she wore to, I believe it was the Met Gala.
It was, sir.
A beautiful white dress that on the back said tax the rich.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say that.
Yeah. Let me pull it up and make sure I'm saying the right thing.
No, it says tax the rich. I saw it 1,000 times this week.
Yeah, tax the rich. It was, huge. And she is really good at
pissing off lots
making
of dudes.
News, pissing people off. And I don't know. I find her strategies interesting, and that is something that's kind of in the news now. I mean, I think the last few speeches I saw our daddy Biden given was, he was talking about some of the corporations and the top 1% paying their fair share, which I think is maybe an interesting conversation to have. Yeah. So we'll see if that actually happens and how they plan on, implementing that or whatever. But anyway, so she goes to the Met Gala, and a lot of people on the right are, they think it's pretty hilarious that I think it was like $30,000 a ticket to get there, which I'm sure she didn't have to pay. I'm assuming somebody
She was
wanted her
given it
there, so
by
they
the
paid it
organizer.
for her.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Anyway, what are your thoughts on this tax the rich dress?
Well, I mean, what is the purpose of the Met Gala, David? Do you have any idea what that is?
I don't.
The Met Gala is basically kind of like a big fashion show, award ceremony. It's got, if you think about the movies and you think about the Oscars, now just transpose that onto the fashion world. That's what the Met Gala is. Only, it has $30,000 tickets, and it's only the richest people in showbiz and fashion that go there. So why did they want AOC there? Well, they wanted AOC there because they knew it would get publicity. So they gave her a ticket, and she showed up. And of course, she's got to speak out. She's got to really poke the bear, so to speak. She's always got to be an activist. Got to speak to her base, and she put tax the rich. Now I have all kinds of issues with anybody that says tax anyone. That always kind of gets on my nerves a little bit. Now, when I was younger and more impressionable, I always thought tax the rich seemed like a pretty good idea, but the rich are already pretty much taxed. And yes, some of them do pay and a lot of the corporations pay a tax rate that is much lower than some people. Then you got to think that's kind of a convoluted or a complicated issue, because the people who actually create the jobs, and I don't want to sound like a neocon here, I don't want to sound like a Republican, some kind of red, white, and blue flag-waving douchebag, but maybe I am that guy at my core. But those guys are always saying, well, you can't tax the rich like you tax people, because the corporations would just leave, and then where the fuck are you going to work unless you're working for the government? So that's I guess a valid point. But there is a happy medium there, somewhere you could find a taxation rate. But other countries around the world will compete with you and outcompete you because they just won't tax them at all, because they know they create jobs. So whichever way you want to go with that. But irregardless of that, AOC, who is a beautiful woman, by the way, and she wouldn't want me to say that because I'm a 40-something white guy. Sorry, AOC, you are quite attractive to me. But she shows up there, and what is she even doing there? She's a politician. She's supposed to be a public servant, but she's accepting a $30,000 gift because it's perfectly legal if it comes from the organization that makes the event. Here you go. Come on down to our event, and then you accept it. What are you saying about you're a lawmaker? You're supposed to be making laws, but you're showing up on the red carpet to kind of hobnob with the other celebrities who are walking around with no masks on. I don't want to talk about masks, but you do have to bring it up when you see that. And other people have said this before me. We haven't recorded this week. The celebrities are walking around posing for the camera, showing off their svelte bodies, their lean and lithe physiques, and their fashion was kind of, it looks like the Hunger Games. It actually does. Go look it up sometime. But they're walking around maskless, and then everybody who's attending them has masks on. What the fuck, man? There's already a disconnect.
Yeah, let me ask you about that. I mean, when you see, I just pulled up some pictures, and in the background you can see it looks like the people that are working the event, the kind of not the organizers or anything, but maybe the behind the scenes people that are holding doors and doing some of the, I don't want to call it grunt work because
they're grunts.
Doesn't seem that hard. But every celebrity, every politician, everyone who's there basically doesn't seem to really have a mask on. And it's almost like there's this, kind of multi-tiered system here.
Almost.
Caste system or whatever. Yeah, where...
almost.
There's the, I don't want to call it like the middle class or the lower class or whatever, but you guys, we need a mandate that you wear masks everywhere, schools and stores and so on. But when the upper crust has their events, they can go maskless because they've had the vaccine. Even though, I thought you were still supposed to wear it when you had. I'm confused here.
Well, it's a confusing time, man, but there's definitely a caste system here. If you have one group of people who are allowed, quote unquote, to walk around how they please, breathing that sweet, sweet air, untethered by the air, uncovered. But then the other group who are actually working there have to wear a mask. What are you saying? You're saying that your face doesn't have as much value as mine. That's exactly what they're saying. Your rights and your liberties don't matter as much as mine. And I'm rich and I'm famous and you don't fucking matter. Now pick up the train of my dress. Open my door for me. Bring me my drink. Slave, servant. I don't have to look at your fucking face anymore. Because it has to be legally covered. Wow. This is a small story, but it's a gigantic illustration of the caste system that has been developing in this country for quite some time and is now right on the front page news, that you can see that there is a clear divide between the 1% and everybody else that comes below them. They don't view you as having the same rights as they do. And for her to walk around like that and say that she's still of the people, she's clearly not. She's clearly just trying to live her best life with all of her ideas. And I'm glad for her. I'm good for you, girl. Get out there and make a difference. Become the second female president of all time. Because you're going to be after Kamala Harris after she takes the presidency probably next year sometime.
All right. Yeah. So I guess what I was saying, you made an interesting point where, she's a lawmaker. What is she doing at this place? Shouldn't she be in D.C. like making laws or improving laws or something like that? But you're seeing this a whole lot more where on both sides, it's the people who get the most attention. They're not getting attention because they're writing interesting laws and I'm sure they are doing things like that, but the most the ones that seem to be, what's the word? Not they have the better chance of continuing to be voted in or whatever.
Making the waves, making the headlines.
Exactly. You go get on the cable news shows. You go to these events and you make some waves. You go give some speeches or whatever. It's not actually doing the work. And actually, during the last election cycle in 2020, there was a congressman who got voted in. I want to say this is his first term, but he's a Republican named Madison Cawthorn, young man. I believe he's in a wheelchair, but he basically, I'm trying to remember what the term is for. So usually whenever they put together a staff, they have some communication staff, they have some part of their staff that helps like write laws and kind of do that stuff. This guy made a decision. It was going to be, I'm all communications. I don't need any help with that because that's not going to keep me in this job.
Right.
We're gonna hit social media hard. We're gonna do all this stuff, and if you see any of the content this guy puts out, it is very well done. It's professional and it's polarizing. And this guy, I think, will continue getting in there. I don't know if AOC has the same thing. Who knows? She might not even have the same strategy, but she does a really good job. And I think this is really it's evident because she is so polarizing. And you can ask if somebody leans a little bit to the right, and we used to do this. It was kind of funny. We used to, people would be, oh man, I hate this woman. And be like, yeah, well, I mean, come on, let's be honest. She's kind of pretty, right? And you could not get somebody to say yes to that. Even though, I mean, I'm not saying she's not like on the cover of Vogue or anything, or maybe she has been. I don't know.
I'm sure she already has been.
Yeah, but I mean, she's an attractive woman. I mean, I think if somebody is just kind of
objective,
if they're honest,
yeah,
if they're objective, they're honest, but that just shows how intense politics is. It just shows how much that really weighs on the scale, where somebody could be like, and it goes the other way. I forgot that actress she was at like Brett Kavanaugh's hearing and stuff, and she's like, she's a little older now, but she's so political, and everything she does is super political that you probably couldn't get somebody to say she's attractive either. So I do find that interesting.
You may have been talking about Rose McGowan now, or Alyssa Milano, but either way. But yeah, objectively, if you just look at AOC, you can say that's a pretty gal, that's a pretty woman. But of course, you can't say gal. I just did that for fun. But one thing you did bring up there, and I know we have to wrap this up because we both have things to do. But one thing you did bring up there is, like, as I was saying, they're attending all these different events, and instead of back there in D.C. making laws. Well, good. I'm glad, because I don't want any more fucking laws. Don't we have enough laws? How many more laws do we fucking need? There's 23,000 CFRs, Code of Federal Regulations or something like that. There's millions of there's reams of paper. There's electronic documents left and right of all these different controls that just tell you what to do every second of the fucking day. I'm glad. I hope they just attend events from here on out. If that's what we're going to do, and then my dad, Joe Biden, can just tell me what to do, just lay it out there for me on TV every once a week, just like, oh, go do this, and or you'll have this punishment. And then I was, okay, Daddy, and I go do that. That way, I don't have any more laws. I just have mandates. And that seems a lot better for our future, for my children's future. That's what I hope we kind of develop into, is like lawmakers don't actually make any more laws or rules for us to follow. We have a clear, benevolent dictator that we can just listen to, and he'll take care of us because he has our best interests at heart. I hope that's the way it goes.
You make a good point. If they stop making these damn laws, his patience won't be as thin, right?
That's right. No reason.
Well, before we go, and I was kind of this kind of is in the same lane a little bit. The whole recall that recently, the recall vote that happened in California, and there was a big buildup. It was pretty interesting seeing it happen, and the recall, they decided not to recall Gavin Newsom. He's still going to be governor of California. They're moving on. I was going to see your thoughts on it, and I guess just really quickly, my thought, the Larry Elder, he's been a radio show host. He's on, he goes on like Fox News every now and then, and it's obvious anybody could have thrown their hat in the ring, and he did, but it seems like somebody like that's so opinionated. Do you think that kind of worked against the Republicans in that sense? I'm not saying maybe somebody with less name ID wouldn't have even made a splash. I mean, he's got people know who he is, but he's also really polarizing too. Do you think that kind of weighed into the whole thing?
I think before anyone goes out there and puts their name in the hat, what they need to do is they need to spend about 6 hours on YouTube watching videos, the man on the street videos, where random people would go up to other random people on the street and ask them basic questions about how the country's doing and about what happened in history. What happened in 1865 in the United States? What were the sides of the Civil War? What do you think about all this trade war with China? And then listen to the answers. Listen to the answers that come back to you. And then when you decide to go in and make your case for your campaign, then just withdraw all that, because you cannot have an opinion. You cannot be definite about facts and logic and reason with a populace like that. Because by and large, that is a representation. Now, I know they take the worst case scenarios from those interviews, the funniest ones where they don't really know who's on the face of the $5 bill. That's hilarious to middle-aged people throughout the country and older people. But what the people really need to understand is the election process as it is today. And this was a news story that was coming out of California. It was, people were showing up at the polls and they were being told, "Oh, I'm sorry, you can't vote. You've already voted." And then that was put out there as like, maybe there's some election fraud. I would say there probably was some election fraud, but not enough to sway it in the Gavin Newsom's. I think that you get what you pay for. And California seems to like Gavin Newsom. They seem to like their idea of their life out there, so it's not that bad for them. And they're fine with all the rules and all the crumbling infrastructure and the shit on the street. They have patrols in San Francisco, famously, for people who have to go around and pick up human shit because, there's homeless crisis everywhere. There's 66 or 33,000, depending on who you believe, homeless people in Los Angeles. There's raging wildfires and rolling blackouts, and these are actual things that happen. And if you say that that's what you want, because that's apparently the referendum that came back, that's what you want. When you say that Gavin Newsom stands for racial equality, that's what he actually said. He stood for racial equality, not the black guy. That's cool. Hope you enjoy that. So you get what you pay for. Enjoy yourself out there on the coast. I hear it's quite beautiful this time of year. If you can see through the haze that's threatening the redwoods out there from the raging wildfires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I agree.
no, it's You paint a pretty grim picture. I actually had a neighbor who recently was in where was my neighbor? He went to San Diego, and he said it was, oh man, just perfect weather.
Oh, it is. I've been there. It's quite beautiful.
Yeah. No, you know what? And you talked about it a little bit to me yesterday about, the state you live in, Louisiana, and how it kind of ranks toward the bottom in a lot of things. And I don't know, man. I think you would probably enjoy living in old Cal. I mean, other than like the high tax rate and stuff. Actually, you know what? That would actually be kind of enjoyable to see you live there, just to see what would torture you.
It all tortures me, no matter where I live, David. So I mean, it's just like it's one extreme to the other. I'm a natural curmudgeon. I'm just a guy who's not really fed up with the world, but I look at the world and I see the behavior of it, and I'm saying there should be a clear path, but I know there's no clear path because humans differ in so many different ways. So I'm not really have any hatred or disgust for California any more than I have disgust for Louisiana. It's all just humans trying to figure out the best way to do things and generally fucking it up and occasionally having a good time and enjoying that scenic, clear weather out there on the beaches. Oh, it is quite lovely out there, La Jolla especially. It's beautiful.
Yeah. No, for sure. Well, they tried. They failed. But it was interesting to watch. So,
indeed, sir.
And I think it really does. I think I heard somebody saying this, and what stood out to me the most was they're going through this recall, and it seems like, before the recall, there was a lot of energy behind it. I know we didn't talk about it on this show or anything, but yeah, there was some energy behind it, and it was if Larry Elder or one of the Republicans would have won, and then you look at, Feinstein, you got a senator who is, a little bit long in the tooth. That could, she's still got like 4 years, no telling what's going to happen with, I'm not wishing anything upon it, but if, let's say she was to pass, now you got a Republican senator there. You got the Supreme Court, who knows? It's just the balance of the whole thing. And I don't know if that really got people out to vote because, people that follow it, I follow these things a little bit. I find it interesting, but, my sister-in-law, she lives in California, and she was telling me, everybody received a ballot. You just get a ballot for it. Yeah. So you don't have to request it. You just get it in the mail. And I was like, oh wow, that's kind of interesting. Here in Texas, you have to want to vote to go vote. Over there, I guess you can just receive it. But it was funny because even with people receiving a ballot, I don't know how much of the population actually voted. I think it was what you would normally see, anywhere between maybe 50% or less. I don't know. I'd have to look into that.
The last count that I saw was about 19 million people.
And it's so great. You get a ballot, you get postage to send it back, and most people are like, nah.
I'm actually most of the time I'm glad. I'm glad they do that. Just like I'm glad they don't make more laws or they slow down a bit. And you're not qualified to make decisions. Don't be picking our leaders.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think a lot of people would think, with people just getting a ballot, oh my gosh, now people who are super uninformed are going to vote. And maybe there are some people that are super uninformed that did vote or whatever. But I think a lot of people who don't really care and don't really follow it just toss that thing in the trash anyway,
Yeah, man. The weather is beautiful out there. It's like 75 with no humidity. You get that in the mail, you just chunk it in the garbage, and you go out there and you look at the clear skies and you have a nice beverage and take in the scenic beauty of the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah. We definitely have humidity here in Houston, and we don't have a scenic ocean. Have you been to Galveston?
I've taken vessels in and out of Galveston, so yes, it's quite disgusting, and it's covered in mosquitoes. Tiger stripe mosquitoes.
Oh, well, this has been fun.
Vampiric. In
this has been fun.
We got to get out of here, man. We got shit to did, but I
got to shop for a lawnmower.
Get two, one for each hand. Full power gasoline, American, all the way.
Heck yeah! Alrighty, man. Well, this has been fun.
Yep, agreed. I'll talk to you later, man.
Sounds good. I'll talk to you later.
Later.
top hits. Neighbors think it's obnoxious. I'm sorry, Mrs. Anderson, but damn, you gon' have to wait until the drop hits. I forgot to take my vitamins, but didn't forget to smoke.